What's going on, FPL managers? Welcome to another stream and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. It's game week 35 time, although game week 34 isn't quite over, with Palace and Leeds tonight and Chelsea Man United on Thursday, with a Champions League in between. And yeah, we're going to discuss some explosive assets for the remainder of the season. Only 4 game weeks to go, and I'm joined as usual by Ryan. How are you, bud?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Ted. It's great to be here. I'm already noticing Fraser in the chat. He's mentioned Robbo, the saviour. Well, Robbo's been, a bit of a sinner for me this week. He's the one talking about explosive players. My game week was going so well. I wish we did the stream 24 hours ago, not right now. But yeah, Robbo absolutely killing me. So it started off being a really good game week, and Robbo's killed me now. So yeah, not looking too good at the moment. How are you doing?
Oh, I felt exactly the same. As a Liverpool fan, I went, yes, no. So Robbo scored. A non-Robbo owner as well, of course. Well, I can't believe I've been ignoring him for so long. And shock horror, he does form a very explosive asset in FPL. And I wonder whether we need to bring him in now. I mean, nothing's really changed. 15 points doesn't really say, oh, I need this player. We know how consistent this guy is as well. But it's difficult to fit into our teams. And I wonder with like the Reece James leaving out and stuff, I wonder whether our attention shifts from Chelsea to, optimizing that the back line, the defenders and stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to talk through that later. A slight red arrow for you, Ryan. 3K, is it? You've just been muddling about that 110K mark.
Well, no, you think that, right? But I actually got to within 1 point of the top 100K. So I was that close. I could taste it. And, it's been a difficult season. I've spoken about that before. But it's also fun to find the challenges in the difficulties. So yeah, tantalizingly close to the top 100K. And then Robbo's 15 points last night. Salah's effective ownership over 100%. I didn't captain him. Nothing from Mount, nothing from Havertz. I went Reece James while I had him as opposed to Alonso. And Alonso, of course, gets the assist and the clean sheet. So yeah, last night or yesterday, it couldn't have gone any worse for me. Weghorst on the bench as well. So yeah, very close to the top 100K, but sent plummeting down. I think I'm only 15 points or so outside the top 100K. And that's probably the goal now for the rest of the season, just to finish inside the top 100K.
Yeah, very, very doable. And you mentioned Weghorst there. He's having a little bit of form again. Just everyone removed him and then he starts scoring and assisting. Well, a big win for Burnley, that really big, makes the relegation race pretty tight. And yeah, you mentioned Alonso. That assist at the end was a massive swing because beforehand he was on the clean sheet, but he got booked. He was only on 5 points. And obviously Reece James owners were feeling a bit worse for wear because he totally left out. But yeah, Alonso assist moved him up into 2 bonus as well, so 10 points. Very, very decent. He has looked okay, actually. Not too bad. So he could be starting for the rest of the season. It could be a priority transfer for people who maybe want to move on from Reece James. Having said that, it does look like he will play, Reece James will play against Man United on Thursday. Apparently it's not an injury, it's just a precautionary tale. So, I think keeping Reece James is absolutely fine. We know what an explosive asset he is. But yeah, fairly fortunate to get the Alonso attacking returns. But yeah, we're going to have a look at stats later, and Alonso does impress, actually. So, but yes, before we move on to that, we're also expecting a double game week 36 or 37 announcement for Man City, this elusive Man City game against Wolves. And I thought it was a bit coincidental that the Sky presenters mentioned the possibility of this fixture going into game week 37, and this was only yesterday. And apparently we're getting an announcement today. So I don't know whether that's coincidence about whether it's going into game week 37, but a lot of the guys that spend a lot of time analysing all of this think it's game week 36, or have thought it is game week 36 for a while. So not really sure what to think. I have actually created a fixture ticker that has the fixture in game week 37, so I will caveat that later on, but that's what I think is probably going to happen, but we will see.
Yeah, I want it to go into 36. As someone who doesn't have any chips left, no free hits left, I think it makes my life a little bit easier if it's in 36. There is a small advantage. I don't think it's a huge one, but there is a small advantage to those with a free hit left, I think, if that fixture goes into 37.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi to everyone in the chat. Bernardo Santos, welcome, mate, as usual. Haiku New is asking me, as a Liverpool supporter, do I want Everton to get relegated? What a good question that is. And yeah, that obvious question. And my thoughts are definitely not. Because that fixture is just so important for Liverpool, and it's such a historic fixture. That rivalry provides such entertaining matches. Like, even Everton's such poor form, they put up a really good fight yesterday, and I thought it was a really like Atletico Madrid sort of grinding performance, and it made for good entertainment at the end of the day. And I'm not one for really wishing harm on any other team or anything like that. So
yeah,
even if it's a big rivalry. But again, I'm not from the city, so maybe that's it. But yes, let's move on to the actual content of the video, and we'll start with the sponsor stuff as usual. SoRare Academy. If you like fantasy games, go check this out. You pick 5-a-side team from the top 5 European leagues. We've got Neuer, Carvajal, Havertz, a very grumpy Havertz in that photo. Goodness me, looks grumpy in that. I don't know why, maybe just blanked at the weekend. And then Neymar and Mbappe, so you can choose all of these talented players, and it runs from the Friday, I think, to the following Monday or Tuesday. So you've got a weekend worth of fantasy stuff. If you do well at this, you can win some prizes, mainly SoRare cards, which is a competition that allows you to buy these sorts of cards and then compete with them with other people in tournaments. So if you like that sort of stuff, go check out SoRare Academy, completely free to play. So yeah, go check it out. But before, not before, let's have a look at the fixture stuff that I was talking about earlier. And let me just get my ducks in a row. So I've done the fixture ticker, and this is with Man City, Wolves, assumed to be in game week 37. So everything else is confirmed, but that specific combination, Man City have a double game week in 37, that specific thing is not confirmed, and it's just my assumption from what's happened in the last day or so. So Leicester there, top of the ticker. The picture on the left is the top 10 in the fixture difficulty ratings, and then the graphic on the right is the bottom 10. Leicester at the top there. That's because they have 2 double game weeks, presumably. Aston Villa following them with a double too. Now I wonder for people without any chips, Ryan. I guess you've got to start thinking about Leicester, Villa, and maybe even Everton, who also have a double-double. Any picks that you are looking at the moment that you think would be good?
Yeah, I'm actually really thinking about Aston Villa at the moment. And, they've got the double-double. They've got a double in 36 and 37, as you can see. But that fixture in 35 against Norwich is almost like a double as well. That's at home. And Aston Villa assets, particularly players like Coutinho, seem to do quite well at home. So I'm looking at Aston Villa players. I thought Ollie Watkins in that match against Leicester was quite wasteful, but all of the attack seemed to go through Ollie Watkins. He really is a bit of a focal point for them. So in attack, I'm looking at Ollie Watkins and Coutinho. In defence, I think Matty Cash is probably the best asset to go for. I've got Connor Cody currently in my team, and I've got the exact funds to go straight from Cody to a Matty Cash, for example. And I think that fixture against Norwich is great for a clean sheet, potential attacking returns, and then they've got 4 fixtures in 2 game weeks. So yeah, I like the Villa players for sure.
Yeah, Coutinho's an interesting one. You mentioned that. He had a really poor game against Leicester. I think he only had like 24 touches in the entire game, which is absolutely appalling. And 0 returns in his last 5. But we know how class he is, and he hit the ground running as straight as he joined Aston Villa. So I wonder whether he can regain that form against weaker opposition, starting with Norwich. Although Norwich have been, in good form. Pukki has mustered up some sort of confidence and started putting in some goals. So I wonder how Aston Villa, who have, to be fair to them, they haven't looked incredible in terms of goal scoring form. Although I have to say, Watkins probably was the star player just from the eye test point of view in that Leicester game. So yeah, with forwards limited, he could be an option for sure. How many Leicester players are you looking at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had Harvey Barnes, and I actually sold Harvey Barnes this week because with their European progression, I'm not sure how many games Barnes starts. We actually found out pre-deadline, didn't we, that Barnes was very likely to be benched and Maddison would start. So at the moment, I don't have any plans to bring a Leicester player in 35. The double against Everton and Norwich, both at home in 36, is really nice. And I'll probably only just go for the one. I think James Maddison, if we can get some news around his availability and fitness and whether he's likely to get a start in at least one, if not both of those games, I'd be tempted by Maddison. But I don't know. As someone without any chips left, I'm not that keen on going big on Leicester just because I think that there's going to be so much rotation there.
It's a really interesting one. Like, I don't know what the optimal team for 36 is because Chelsea, they've got their double there, and a lot of content creators have done marvellous jobs earlier before the game week, before this previous game week, saying that Chelsea's FA Cup final with Liverpool is straight after game week 36. So they're likely to rest quite a lot of their first teamers against that second fixture in Leeds, which makes that Chelsea double not really a double. It's just a single fixture against Wolves, which is, very appetizing. And of course, that might not happen, but I seriously think that it would, because obviously Tuchel has to prioritise the only chance of silverware he can. And he's pretty much got that third place locked up now. So, I think that's likely to happen, which means that game week 36 is a bit of a strange one because we're likely to have, if you're free hitting in that week, for example, you're likely to have triple Liverpool. And then if City isn't in game week 37, it's going, right, okay, do we need to focus on Leicester, Villa, Everton? Who else is there? Spurs, but Spurs have got a difficult double. So it's really... If Man City is in 37, I think it really opens it up for some carnage in those two double game weeks, because you're going to have quite a lot of different doublers and good doublers in those two consecutive game weeks. So it's quite difficult to hedge your bets. If you're going to have to hedge because you don't have any chips left, you're going to have to target the likes of Leicester, Villa and Everton. If City double in game week 37, as we're sort of suggesting here. So very, very tricky. But yeah, as we've said, if you're stuck in the mud, just go for the double doublers and you can't really go wrong. I think personally, Leicester players for me, it's probably James Maddison. I'm not really interested in any others.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you got Schmeichel in this week, you managed to catch a rare clean sheet, which is pretty fortuitous. But apart from Maddison, I think the options at Leicester are fairly limited. Crystal Palace is a team that I really like the look of. As someone without any chips left, Wilfred Zaha. I've already got Mateta in my team, but Wilfred Zaha is the talisman of that team. He's on penalties as well for Palace. Their fixture in 36 is against Watford at home, followed by a double against Villa and Everton. So that's also really tempting from Crystal Palace's point of view.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic fixtures from Palace. Zaha's an interesting one. I feel like he does well when Palace do well, and recently Palace have dropped off a little bit, I'd say. They set their standards pretty high earlier in the season, have been doing well. Big results, big scalps. Beating Arsenal was a most recent one. But you can't deny Southampton and Watford, particularly with Southampton's defensive form recently, those are excellent single game weeks. And I wouldn't deny anyone... I wouldn't say that bringing in a Palace player this week, such as Zaha, is a bad idea. And I think quite a lot of people have Mateta already, like you, Ryan, don't you?
I do, yeah. Just for budget reasons. I'm not expecting too much from Mateta. I mean, I would like a decent return tomorrow to save my game week. But yeah, I'm just going to make a quick point about the Arsenal fixtures, because I thought you made a really interesting point about the Chelsea double game week in 36, and it kind of made me think about what's happening with Arsenal and the West Ham game this week. Because if you take the fixture ticker as you've presented it here on face value, it can be a little bit misleading, right? Because we also need to fill in the gaps. And one of the gaps we need to fill in is the Arsenal versus West Ham game of 35. So we know that West Ham, Craig Dawson was sent off in that game against Chelsea. He'll miss that game. That means that Ogbonna, Kurt Zuma, obviously Dawson, and I think Diop as well. So 4 first-choice centre-backs are out for West Ham. And they also play in Europe against Frankfurt just a day or two before that fixture. So it's really helpful to look at this because you might think, oh, that's a single game for Arsenal against West Ham. They're coloured yellow. I might sell Martinelli or Saka for someone who's got a double game week that's green. But then that double game week for Chelsea is probably more a single game week because there's the FA Cup in there as well. So I think, you've raised that point about just trying to add a little bit of detail and context to a fixture ticker.
Yeah, absolutely. That context is absolutely vital. And yes, your point about Arsenal versus West Ham, arguably a fantastic fixture for Arsenal because, West Ham have not had great form. And as you say, they're sort of prioritising Europe as well. So the thing about Arsenal is that how do you rate their double in game week 36? Because I think Leeds earlier in the season were conceding goals left, right and centre, but they've sort of tightened up after Jesse Marsch to a certain extent. And then they've got that London derby against Spurs. And I find that really difficult to call. It's either going to be really tight or it's going to be a goal fest because they're both going for top 4.
Yeah, I don't know if Arsenal can keep it tight at the moment. Like that fixture against Manchester United, I think it depends on which expected goal metric you're looking at. But Manchester United had a greater expected goals than Arsenal in that fixture. They both had a penalty, so you can't argue that the penalty skewed the metric in an unfair way. I think Arsenal conceded quite a few chances to Manchester United. They conceded 2 goals to Chelsea the game week before in a 4-2 victory. It feels like at the moment Arsenal are just going for it in attack and saying that we're just going to score more goals than you can. And Spurs, as a team who like to counter-attack, I think they'll enjoy that. They'll enjoy an attacking Arsenal, and both teams going for top 4. So there's a bit of narrative in there as well. I think that's going to be a spicy fixture. I see a lot of goals in that. So from an Arsenal point of view, I like the attackers. I just don't like the defenders.
Yeah, agreed with that. They've been a little bit defensively weak of late. And with Ramsdale in my goal, I think as you do as well, it doesn't bode well. So yeah, a tad annoying. But yeah, difficult to call that one. And I'm not 100% sure whether I would go overboard with bringing Arsenal players in. I think Saka probably is the one that I would stick with. And anyone else, I mean, maybe Nketiah to enable some budget. He's been having his chances recently, to be fair. So I wouldn't.
Do you think he's got that spot now in Nketiah?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, it looks like Lacazette's leaving at the end of the year, isn't it? So end of the season, I should say. So maybe he wants to give the young lad a little bit more opportunity. And while he's scoring, while he's getting those chances, I don't see why Arteta should remove him, to be honest. So yeah, could be a decent pick. I think he's like 5.2, 5.3 million, something like that. So
he's just gone up. I think he's 5.5 now. So it's the curse of the Arsenal captain. I mean, Xhaka was made captain. We saw what happened there. Aubameyang made captain. We've seen what's happened. Lacazette's been made captain, and all of a sudden he has this urging desire to go back to Lyon. So yeah, it's an interesting one at Arsenal at the moment. I think Nketiah at 5.5 is great value. I think he's got that spot now. I think Arteta's looking to the future, and I think he's got it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm probably going to look for a cheap option. I don't know whether to downgrade to fodder to like a 4.5 or just spend that extra little bit of money for someone who is a little bit in form, who's around that 5.5 million mark. So could be good options. I mean, there's Pookie there as well if someone's interested. And of course, Mateta, I think, is about that price range as well. Another team we haven't really discussed, and they fly under the radar a little bit, but Brentford, I think, are in great form at the moment. And Tony, so many attacking chances at the moment. And Eriksen really makes a difference for them. And I think, arguably, the Man United fixture in 35 is easier than we think. Because they've been defensively pretty leaky. Yes, they've been playing some pretty top teams, but still, Brentford are going to get their chances against Man United. And then Southampton, Everton and Leeds to finish the season. Yes, they might not have a double game week, but I would be tempted. I'd be tempted if you're struggling for like a forward spot, Tony might not be a bad shout, to be completely fair. So in good form. But I think other than that, let's talk about what maybe the plans people should have for the Chelsea and City players, because I think this is the most poignant topic at the moment. We've just had the Chelsea double game week. Yes, they're going to play on Thursday. And we've discussed that this game week 36 double for Chelsea isn't actually ideal, but they have a good fixture against Everton in 35 before that. If Man City, if their double is placed in game week 37, how do you prioritise whether to get City or Chelsea players in from game week 35?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think most managers, if they wanted a Chelsea asset, they would have gone ahead of this double game week, knowing that Chelsea have Everton in 35 and then a double in 36. We've already spoken about the caveat for that double in 36. For me, I've got Havertz, Mount, and Reece James. Just talking about the midfielders, I think Havertz is someone that I'm looking to move on. I'm happy to hold Mount for the rest of the season. Timo Werner, it's problematic up front because he's taking up a fair bit of cash. And then the defensive assets, I think you just hold. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that it needs to be kind of a little bit of a balance in terms of what you do with your Chelsea assets. I don't think it's a mad rush to sell them all. And by no means do I think we need to go out and start bringing any more Chelsea players in, because that fixture in 36 is really just a single game week. So if I'm prioritising transfers between Chelsea and City, I'm going for City over Chelsea.
Yeah, I think that's probably wise, considering the amount that City have to play for, their squad depth, probably the fact that they're going to echo Liverpool in playing their strongest side and flog their players until the end of the season. I think that's probably wise. Unlike Chelsea, that might rest key individuals that maybe have some injury tendencies, like Reece James, and that's possibly why some of us might move on Reece James because of that precautionary precedent that's just been set from Tuchel. But yeah, I think if you've got a free hit and City's placed in 37, depending on how your team's set up, I would be tempted to free hit in 36 and set your team up for 37 with a couple of free transfers now. But obviously, completely team dependent. It depends how many Leicester, Villa, Palace players you have already. But
it's just difficult though. Like, sorry to interject. I just wanted to quickly say though, if you set your team up for 37, right, that means you're targeting Villa, you're targeting Palace, maybe Everton, and these are the players you'll have in your team. But have a look at their fixtures in 38. So Villa, they play City in 38. Palace play United. Everton play Arsenal. So these fixtures, they're quite difficult. Setting your team up for 37, I would probably do it the other way around. I'd set up for 36 and just free hit 37.
I think that's what you've just mentioned is the template play, as it were. I think that makes
the template.
It makes the most sense, I'd say.
Oh,
but the issue is, if City plays their double in 37, who are you gonna have in your team for 36 that has double game weeks? You've got the Liverpool guys, you've got the Spurs guys, with quite difficult double game weeks. You've got Arsenal that, okay. But Chelsea, they probably won't have a double because of that. The reason we've mentioned earlier about the big rotation in that second leg. And City won't have a double. I mean, who else is there? It feels like you're going to have half a double game week team in 36. It's going to be a bit lackluster. And then if you free hit in 37, it's going to contain a lot of City players. It's going to contain... it's going to be City and then Leicester, Villa, Palace, Everton. So that kind of feels a bit lackluster as well. Yes, you can get the 3 City players you want, but at the same time, that's quite difficult to predict at the same time. So I think the cat's really amongst the pigeons if City is placing 37. Really difficult to navigate.
Yeah, I think it leads us back to the discussion we had a few weeks ago. Remember when people were free hitting and there was this discussion about, how many double game week players should I have on my free hit? Should I be going for a Matt Target over a Cancelo? Should I be going for a Fabian Schär over a Robertson, for example? The players that were doubling versus the players from good teams that only had a single game week fixture. What's the optimum strategy here? Is it going for 11 double game week players? For 36, if I was building a free hit team for 36, it sounds controversial, but I don't think I would have 11 double game week players in 36. I'd still want to have one or two City players for that fixture against Newcastle. I'd still probably want to have, I'm looking at the fixture ticker scrambling now to identify other single game weeks that I like, but I would want to have, a sprinkling of good players from good teams, even though they've got a single game week in 36. I don't think the optimum strategy is 11.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fine, especially if you don't have a chip to play. The likes of Palace against Watford in game week 36, Brentford against Southampton again in game week 36. Decent fixture to target, and those guys obviously have remainder of the season with good fixtures. Everton and Leeds for Brentford in 37 and 38. But equally, you could say the same thing about game week 37. Liverpool have Southampton. That's not completely confirmed, but we think it will go into the following midweek. Chelsea have Leicester, who will have been in Europe, and they haven't exactly been solid at the back. And depending on Chelsea's FA Cup result, they'll either be on a high or looking to bounce back from an underwhelming defeat. So I think Chelsea's last two games of the seasons are absolutely fantastic. And the same applies for Spurs as well. Burnley at home and then Norwich away. Very important to have these sides in 37 and 38, because it seems like the best teams have really good end to the season in terms of the last two games. And I guess that kind of leads me towards free hitting in 36, but I guess it depends how the team's set up and what this announcement brings, because it's really difficult to come up with a concrete solution when there's still a variable that we don't know about. Yes, you could come up with multiple things, but it feels like a waste of time, doesn't it?
Yeah. So if you're free hitting, so right now, if City goes into 37, does that confirm your free hit plans either way? Or what does that do?
So I've got triple Chelsea and I've got double City. And it would either make me move my City assets on or move my Chelsea assets on and then free hit in either 36 or 37, depending which of those assets I moved on. Because I want Liverpool until the end of the season. And then, I don't know. I think that Newcastle game for City is quite difficult in 36. It's potentially the banana skin for them if they're going to throw away the title. But then again, Liverpool play Newcastle this week. So I think Newcastle's going to be quite an important team for this title race. But I think probably what I'll do is I'll cut down on the Chelsea players because they seem like the issue. Reece James seems like the issue. I think obviously I'll keep Alonso and I'll probably keep Havertz. But I mean, Phil Foden for City hasn't exactly been doing much. He's been, yes, he got a 10-pointer, but I think that was fairly lucky from a long-range deflection. So I'll count myself lucky for that. But I think probably moving on one Chelsea asset and then, I don't know. It's so difficult. I can speculate. And I also have to decide, right, between upgrading the rest of my team or changing some of the players I already have, like a Reece James to a Robertson or Reece James to a Cancelo or something like that.
Yeah, Reece James, so problematic. I mean, it feels like you need to admit defeat on Reece James and sell to someone like a Robertson, but I can't sell Reece James before Everton away and the double game week potentially in 36. I mean, if anyone's going to play just one fixture, it'll be Reece James in 36. But I don't know if I'm capable of selling Reece James. Are you brave enough to do that?
We all know what he's capable of, but I think that we might be slightly concerning ourselves or making us fearful of him doing an 18-pointer like he did at Burnley. But realistically, the last few games he's played, I'm not sure he scored more than 2 points. I'm not even sure if he's got to 2 points in any of those games. And it's that unsurety. I don't even know if that's a word.
Uncertainty
about him starting because of the precautionary injury thing. And I mean, Tuchel's moved him to right centre back because, I mean, we discussed this last week about the potential for the lack of strain on his limbs and stuff. So very strange. I think he's a big game player. I think Tuchel wants him from that FA Cup final. He's probably going to wrap him in cotton wool until then and probably just utilise him when necessary. And for that reason, he can be expendable, I think.
Yeah, I do agree with you. When I read the Thomas Tuchel comments, it actually really worried me because it looks as though these injuries are they're kind of affecting him mentally. They're affecting him psychologically. He's talking about went for a scan. There's nothing there. There's no injury that they were able to pick up. But Reece James felt as though he could get injured. He felt as though he might get injured in that game. So that's worrying, right? Like from an FPL point of view, we want assets who are going to play. And here we are, someone who's got a history of being injured, saying that they didn't want to play because they were worried that they could get injured. That's concerning.
Absolutely. And Bernardo Santos in the chat is saying 0-1-0-0 are James's points since game week 31. So that kind of says it all. And Baker's in the chat. Hello, Baker. Welcome. Any questions, just give us a shout. But we're going to move on from these fixtures, actually, for the moment, and focus on the main topic of this video, which is explosive assets. And we've done a chart through Ryan's idea, actually. Never done this before. I think Scout have updated their members area to include FPL points, which is remarkable. They didn't have it before. But they have these useful little metrics. You've got the double-digit returns and you've got blanks when starting. That blanks when starting is on the reverse scale. So let's talk you through it. Basically, top right, you've got the players with the most double-digit returns and the fewest blanks when they're starting. So they're the most explosive and the most reliable at the same time. We've got Salah, Trent, Robertson up there, along with De Bruyne. And Cancelo's not too far behind. The teams on the top left are the explosive players, but they do blank a lot. They're not as reliable as these other guys, but when they do return, it could be a double-digit. Players bottom right. These are kind of the newer players to the league. So do caveat it with the amount of starts that they've actually had. So we've got Eriksen, Diaz, Bruno Guimaraes and Kulusevski, all with limited starts because they have started playing later in the season. But very few blanks. And, Kulusevski's done absolutely fantastic, being a regular asset. I do wonder when Kulusevski, whether he is still a good asset, because I think we discussed this before the stream actually happened, Ryan, that he's a sort of player that really benefits from the side that he's playing in being in good form, scoring lots of goals. But if they're not, which I think has happened in the last couple of games against Brighton and Brentford, he probably can be a little bit indispensable. And I'm tempted to sell Kulusevski if that theme continues. But Bruno Guimaraes, Luis Diaz, Eriksen's done a wonder for Brentford, hasn't he, Ryan? So yeah, just to finish off the description of the chart, the bottom left guys, limited double-digit return potential and pretty inconsistent as well. We've got the Richarlisons, the Zahas, the Watkins, Pookies and Mbermo of this world. Surprised to see Rafinha down there, actually. I thought he got more double-digit returns this season, but maybe he's just ticked along.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think he got one double-digit return last season. How many is he on this season? One or two?
Yeah,
looks like one from just the one. Yeah, so and we were discussing Rafinha, weren't we, about a player that you're probably not fearful to sell because he's not very likely to hurt you with a double-digit return. But it's a fantastic graph to just have a look at the dominance of the Liverpool players. Look at the Liverpool players there in the top right. You've got 5 Liverpool players on screen. I think you've got 5 City players as well. And that just comes back to what we were talking about before, that these are the players you want, double game week or not. You want the good players from the good teams. And right now, obviously, that's Liverpool and City. Mount, Alonso there, interestingly, to see Alonso. Definitely the managers who went Alonso over Reece James are the ones who have benefited so far this game week. But yeah, interesting to see Robertson and Trent so close to each other across the season. I was looking at these statistics and I filtered it, Ted, by the last 6 game weeks. Have a guess. How many double-digit returns has Trent got in the last 6 game weeks?
I'm going to guess very few. So like 0 maybe.
Correct. And how many has Robbo got?
Considering I haven't owned him and I've had lots of red arrows, I'm going to guess loads.
Yeah.
Like
well, he's only
5.
got 2.
Oh, he's only got 2. Okay, that's not too bad.
But here's one for you, Ted. How many has Joel Matip got?
Oh, budget. Love it. I mean, really? Are you
Yeah.
asking him? You asking me like it's more than Robbo? Is it? Is it 3?
I wish it was 3. That would be amazing. No, it's 1, but it's still more than Trent in the last 6 game weeks, and at 5.1. So if you filter this by the last 6 game weeks, you're starting to see some different names pop up, same clubs, but different names. So yeah, really interesting to have a look at these stats.
Yeah, I mean, Matip could be an enabler if you want a third Liverpool player, but can't quite stretch to the likes of Robertson, and you need to cater for other things in your team. So yeah, really good point, and something that I genuinely have to consider. But I mean, after yesterday, Robertson's just he's just so good. And I know it's massive recency bias, but I just looked at his record since like game week 23 or something, and just absolutely insane. I can't believe I've gone without him, but I'm sure a lot of people are in that boat as well because he's not particularly well owned either. And that's just because you're bringing in another expensive Liverpool player, and we've got to spread those funds around. But yeah, let's have a chat about some of these players on the graph actually, because I think Timo Werner is an interesting one, and of course, displaying stats across the entirety of the season does negate some of the most recent form. And we're going to have a look at some stats later on that just show the last 6. And it does show Werner in a favourable light. So just to put this into context, Werner has blanked 9 times when starting, and he has started 12 times. So he's actually only, it's not a good ratio, but 2 of those returns have come in the last 4 game weeks. So showing a little bit of form. Not really many double-digit returns at all. 1 for the entire season. Can a player, Ryan, change so fundamentally from one part of the season to another just because maybe he's being utilised different in the team? Maybe there's been a tweak in confidence. But are those things actually sufficient enough to completely revolutionise a player?
Yeah, completely revolutionize. I'm not sure, but yeah, definitely. I think players can change. We've seen countless examples of when managers have utilized players in different positions, in different roles, their form has changed. I think we're seeing that a little bit with Burnley, would you believe, at the moment, with players like Wout Weghorst. Even Dwight McNeil looked pretty good in that game against Wolves. So I think definitely players can change based on the way that their managers are utilising them in the team. But with a player like Timo Werner, I think we saw it again against West Ham. He had 5 shots in the box. He's just so wasteful. These inherent characteristics in players, maybe they can't. Maybe they are the things that are more difficult to change. Thomas Tuchel can utilise Werner in a multitude of roles and positions, but if Werner is just not a great finisher, he's just not going to deliver the same that a Son, for example, would in the same role in the same team.
We know he's not a good finisher. We've seen multiple occasions of fluffing his lines. Even in the games that he's done well recently, multiple opportunities missed, especially against Southampton. Yes, he got a few returns in that, but he could have got way more. And he had his chances at the weekend. I thought he was a much better player in terms of getting those chances than the likes of Havertz. And I think Mason Mount was more involved. Havertz just went missing. I wonder whether it was just the state of the game, whether they had to break down an opponent more effectively, and Havertz was probably shifted out to the wide areas a little bit more. Maybe when those big chances start coming for Havertz, he is going to be the better option, but difficult to predict when that happens. But Werner was definitely more lively, definitely can see that potential, and I'm not surprised people are bringing him in to their FPL teams.
Yeah, I kind of see Werner, though, the same as Watkins on the chart here, that these are players who their greatest quality, I think, would be their pace. And their pace is what gets them into the positions to get these shots in the box, to get these chances. But I just don't think that they're great finishers. And so they'll continue to get decent chances, big chances, shots in the box. But I just think that trying to catch their hauls is very difficult because we can't rely on their conversion. Watkins, I've owned him quite a bit in FPL. And I was fortunate enough to own him when he scored the 12 points. I think it was against Norwich earlier in the season. But I kind of felt going into that I really couldn't expect too much from Watkins. He would get chances. He's the focal point of the Aston Villa attack. Werner, similar, will get chances. He's the focal point of their attack, but they just can't finish that well.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with everything you said about Werner. Like, he can't finish. The goals that he scored recently, a couple of them were massive deflections, which is fairly fortunate. Just the last word on him. I think the fact that he's more involved in these games, he's playing Man United on Thursday. I think owners can expect maybe a return in that game because he's going to benefit from that space. But I think personally he's going to start getting more assist points until the end of the season because he's going to be more involved. He's going to get into the right positions, maybe at the edge of the box, side of the box, and he's going to make a decent pass to someone who's going to tap the ball in. I think that's the sort of goals that Chelsea are going to look to score, and I think maybe Havertz might benefit from that. But I wouldn't expect Werner to start getting lots of goals. I think some of these teams that they're playing, they're fighting for things and they're a little bit more tight than maybe Southampton were when they beat them 6-0. And Werner's not going to get tap-ins or open goals every single time. Man United haven't been great defensively, but still they're going to afford him some space. And I think, the assist points might come for Werner, but I wouldn't expect too much more than that, to be fair. Let's move on to another player. Pukki's an interesting one because he's attracted some attention, Ryan, and even I'm considering him. We're going to look at the chart in a minute, and he's absolutely fantastic for big chances. But we can see there, blanks when starting, 20 out of 32 starts. It's a poor ratio, and 0 double-digit returns for the entire season. And I guess we don't need to expect double-digit returns from someone who's only 5.2 million, is he? Something like that.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised he hasn't got a double-digit return. I don't know how many fixtures Norwich have scored 2 goals in. And that's the problem with Pukki, is he is almost the opposite of Werner in that I think Pukki is a decent finisher. I just don't think playing in that Norwich team, he gets the amount of chances he needs to try and score double-digit returns. So Pukki at his price is a good enabler, but I'm not sure how many games you'd start him in if you brought him into your team. You'd play him in the double game week in 36. But having a look at Norwich's fixtures, they've got Aston Villa this week, and then they've got the double followed by Wolves and Tottenham. So not great fixtures for Norwich apart from that double in 36.
I was way off on the price, by the way. He's 6 million, a little bit more expensive than I thought. And maybe that sort of puts me off. I think maybe an Nketiah or a Mateta maybe is more applicable for that price. But you can't deny the XGI stats he's got at the moment. And
I just don't know. I mean, how many games are Norwich going to score in? That's the problem with Pukki. I would rather spend the money on a Mateta, who is probably more of a rotation risk, but plays for a better team and has better players creating chances for him. Or I'd spend the money on an Nketiah, for example. They're, again, more of a rotation risk with Nketiah, plays for a better team, will get more chances. And Nketiah, I mean, if Pukki had that chance that Nketiah had on the weekend when he fired it straight at David De Gea, I think Pukki scores that.
Yeah, I think he's in better form. I think when you watch him, he's having those chances that he had that breakout season. Very, very similar stuff, and he was converting them. He's very close. He's missing them past the post. And I can just see it. I can just see him getting some returns in the next couple of game weeks. I think Aston Villa away is accessible in game week 35, and I like their double, Norwich. Game week 36, West Ham at home, Leicester away. Both teams are either vying in Europa or the Europa Conference around that time as well. So they're maybe going to take it easy on Norwich because of that perceived easier fixture difficulty. I just wonder. I wonder whether Pukki can get something in that. I am tempted, has to be said.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, if you're spending a free transfer on a Pukki, I mean, unless it's part of 2 transfers to enable an upgrade elsewhere, it feels like a bit of a waste of a transfer.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, transfers are valuable. I have got Sam Maximan to get rid of.
Oh no! Did he blank? He blanked both times, didn't he? For your captaincy.
He blanked both times for my captaincy. Got a dodgy assist this week against Norwich, so I'll take it. I'll take it and run. But yeah, I need to downgrade Sam Maximan to someone that gives me enough money to upgrade the rest of my team, and whether that's a Kulusevski up to, I don't know, like a Maddison, or a Reece James up to a Robertson or something like that. Having said those two, I think maybe James up to a Robertson sounds the most appealing. But Yeah, you're right. It does feel like a wasted transfer, but at the same time, I can just see Pookie getting something. But yeah, from this graph, it doesn't bode well in terms of his consistency over the season.
Yeah. Can I mention a player? Is that okay? I just want to
Yeah,
jump
go
in.
for it.
We're talking about relegation teams with Norwich. I'm looking at Richarlison, Everton, talking about their chances of relegation earlier in the stream. Are you tempted by a Richarlison for double game week 36 or 37? Everton have back-to-back doubles.
Yeah, I don't normally buy into the whole premise of a team scrapping for their life, but actually, just that Liverpool game just showed me how sort of fierce they are. I mean, they're not a Southampton versus Chelsea. They're not, letting it all go by without a care in the world. They don't really care they're losing 6-0. They were scrapping for their lives. And I know it's the Merseyside derby, but it kind of sets the precedent till the end of the season. They're in the relegation zone now. It would be completely unprecedented for them to go down. And they need to fight. They need to fight with all their will. And I think Richarlison antipathizes that. And I think he's going to be a key player for them. I think he's going to get some goals. So, yes, they don't have that much quality, it has to be said. Gordon seems lively, not much more than that. Richarlison is probably the one from that team that can get the goals. He's been missing loads, but as long as he's getting the chances and can put maybe one away in a match, then I think he's a really good pick. And I wouldn't mind owning him until the end of the season, to be completely fair. Does that match your...
Completely. Yeah, I completely agree. From watching that game, Gordon is you're right, he is lively. The penalty shout I thought was fair to turn down. I don't think that was a penalty, but Gordon, he's got fast feet, and we saw last season, Manchester United, they were awarded a lot of penalties. Martial, Rashford, these players running at you in the box, it does attract penalties. And when you've got players like Gordon and Richarlison running at you, the chances of getting a penalty does increase. Richarlison's on penalties now, so that's in his favour as well. I'd be more likely to spend more and go for Richarlison rather than Pookie. I'd probably even favour Richarlison over a Watkins. I just think that Richarlison, given the same chances, converts more than Watkins, and I'd rather go for a Coutinho from Aston Villa than a Watkins.
How much is Richarlison? He's about...
I'm going to say 7.6.
7.6, yeah, something like that. Let me just double check. Under 8 million. Richarlison, 7.5 million. So for someone like me who's to upgrade Sam Maximan, who's like 6.8, that's an extra 0.7 I have to find somewhere.
You don't have that. Yeah, that's tough.
I don't know. I kind of do want to do it, but it means downgrading like Kulusevski to someone, I don't know, like a 5.5 million option. And there aren't too many of those about, really. Probably something I can't really do. But I think for anyone who has that potential to downgrade someone in their forward line or has the right funds for it, then I think it could be fruitful. Late Riser got on Richarlison well early, didn't he? And he's been doing well for him, to be fair. Really, really good differential. So yeah, I'm not sure it works for me, but if your team structure is suitable.
If you've got a Timo Werner, for example, you could drop down Werner to Richarlison. I think that times well because in the short term, Chelsea's fixtures are better than Everton's, but then Everton have the double-double when Chelsea... when their doubles end. So I think that could be a move, Werner to Richarlison.
After the Everton match, I think probably makes sense. I wonder whether people will actually do that, though, because presumably they've only got Werner by either wildcarding him in or making that transfer this week. And it's almost like admitting defeat on a player just before a perceived double game week for Chelsea, isn't it?
Yeah, but I feel like you buy players like Werner as a short-term punt. Like a Sterling is another example of, okay, you recognize the potential for a high ceiling in this player. I'm going to bring them in, and I'm happy to admit defeat because, I just didn't catch the haul, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. I mean, you've got to be bold to bring in Werner in the first place, but yeah, that upside was there. The momentum is there. It's still there. He still could do well at Man United. The thing that worries me is Havertz next to him, 77 minutes per start. I wonder whether he got reduced minutes earlier in the season, because that's the lowest on this chart. Tends to get brought off early. Not great. But ignoring that, just want to address like the comparison between Kane and Son, because it's pretty evident here. It's surprising to me how unreliable Kane has been in a variety of these matches. And I know this is a reiteration of what I said earlier. This is a full season picture, and we saw that he wasn't that great earlier in the season. So I wonder if we split it, he'd probably be a little bit more reliable in the most recent set of matches. But still, it's shown that Son is a little bit more reliable than him and more explosive. So, and like 2 million cheaper. So you've got to be happy owning Son over Kane, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this is where the points that midfielders get for goals and clean sheets come into it as well. And that really helps Son over Kane. We know that when strikers score goals, it helps them with their bonus points. But on the whole, I think with Son, he has the clean sheet. He has the extra point for the goal, which probably swings it in his favour. I'm just trying to load up the stats for Kane and Son, their double-digit returns in the last 6 matches, or you could even kind of extend it a little bit longer since Conte came in, because, yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether Kane catches up to Son.
Yeah, we could have a look at those stats in the last 6 game weeks in a minute. And,
beautiful.
Yeah, it might twizzle around just to ruin it for everyone. But the double-digit returns, as you said there, you need the bonus. You need to be a bonus magnet in order to get that on top of a single attacking return, and that could turn it into a double-digit return. The likes of De Bruyne and Cancelo seem to be doing that. And Cancelo here, surprisingly how high he is for double-digit returns along the lines of Robertson. And I guess that's what you get when he does get an assist and a clean sheet. He probably does get those double-digit returns. That's all he needs. So this certainly suggests that going Cancelo over the likes of Laporte is worth it. But it depends how many attacking returns he does get in the remainder of the season. So reliable.
Yeah. But that's the frustrating thing about Cancelo, is that we've spoken about at length the limited attacking returns that he's actually had this season. I think he's only scored the 1 goal. He has accrued a few assists, but I think it's only 4 or 5 that he's had in the season. But here he is with, what do we got, 6 or 7 double-digit returns for Cancelo. So you have to attribute that mostly down to bonus points, I think.
Yeah, it's the combinations where he gets like a clean sheet, because obviously City get the clean sheets and then maybe a single attacking return, and that's enough to get him some bonus, which puts him into double digits, which is great. But as you said, he's had like the most shots in that City team. He's only scored 1 goal because they've been really, really low XG values, which is fine. With this short turnaround, 4 game weeks to go, with those sporadic efforts that Cancelo generates, I wonder whether he is worth it still over Laporte, because Laporte has his goal threat as well. And I think they're both as kind of nailed as each other. Laporte got taken off a 62nd minute at the weekend, which kind of suggests to me that he's played a lot of games, Pep's saving him for Europe, and just to make sure that he's managing his player well. So I think Laporte plays the remainder of the games, just as Cancelo will.
It's just that there's such a potential to hurt you, though. And it depends on your risk appetite. Like, I've already spoken about Robertson and how he hurt my rank. Even at 100K or 100,000K, Robertson sent me back down 7,000 places just through his points alone. And so Trent, Robertson, Cancelo as the 3, including Alonso, the 4 most explosive defenders across the season, according to this graph. The potential there to hurt you is real. And so how much do you chance that? How willing are you to bet against that? Because if you get it wrong, it's going to hurt you a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It just hurts when the player that you own in Trent, who kind of people are getting off at the moment in favour of Robertson, doesn't do anything. And then you don't get that 20 or 30% effective ownership to cancel out what Robertson's doing to you. So if there's a massive swing in the game between those 2 players and you only owed one of them, it can be quite difficult with the ranking. But yes, I think we'll move on to the last 6 game weeks and just we'll look at exactly the same players that are on this. And I mean, just see how they're getting on recently, because it can paint a negative or even overly positive picture by looking at different time frames. So we've got the big attempts versus small attempts here. Big attempts is big chances plus big chances created. Small attempts are the smaller versions, the more difficult versions of those. And in the player bubbles, we've got the attacking returns split by big and small as well. And starting at the top there, Pookie's best for big attempts. We were discussing him earlier, his lack of consistency over the season. But recently, he's been putting in those big returns. And Jesus there almost single-handedly appearing on this graph just from that single game. I think he got like 5 returns, didn't he? So crazy for anyone that bought Jesus in on a free hit or something. Fair play to you. But interesting, Kane is next in the last 6. That kind of surprises me because he's been a little bit lackluster, but still plenty of assists. He's been assisting Son, who is considerably worse down in this graph compared to Kane. And I wonder what we were discussing earlier, Ryan, flips on its head. Do you think Kane is a better option than Son?
Yeah, I've noticed watching Spurs recently that Son's positioning has changed. I'm not a Spurs fan, so I'm not going to pretend that I've watched their games in detail like other people I'm sure in the chat have seen. But yeah, recently it looks as though Son's just taking up a lot of positions higher up in the pitch, just kind of, parking himself in the centre forward position and almost waiting for the ball to come to him. You saw that game against Aston Villa, playing away from home. He was playing quite high, feeding off the long balls and the knockdowns from Harry Kane. So, yeah, I still think that despite the difference here between Kane and Son, that from what I've seen from Son recently in his positioning on the pitch, I still favour Son over Kane. There's the benefit of Kane is that he solves that forward problem, right? You've got to play one forward, and then if you've got Kane in your team, at least you can plug him in. But yeah, at this stage of the season, I think whichever one you've got, you hold. I don't think it's worth selling one for the other. I don't even think it's worth doubling up. I think at the moment, there's too much money invested in both of them. I would have one and just hold that.
I think maybe for the last 2 games of the season, Spurs, like a double up on Spurs would be great because they've got Burnley and Norwich. Absolutely fantastic. And obviously, I think the top 4 race will still be on there, so they could actually just decimate those 2 teams. But I agree with you up to that point. I think maybe one will suffice because they're not free scoring anymore, it seems. But yes, you mentioned forwards there. Interesting that the top 5 players in terms of being closest to the top right-hand side are actually all forwards. Jesus, Pookie, Kane, Tony and Cristiano Ronaldo. Making a resurgence of this position. That might be a little bit getting ahead of ourselves because I'm not sure how legitimate Jesus, Tony, Pookie. I mean, you could go Tony or Pookie if you were wanting to go with the form. And I do like Pookie for his double game week, but as we've mentioned earlier, very difficult to spend 6 million on this player, especially as it's one transfer. But anyway, Salah has taken a little bit of a dive in terms of his stats. He's normally top right for everything. It's maybe nothing to worry about. He's still returning mainly the big return stuff, but when you're not doing the small returns, as he's only got 0.2 small returns per appearance in the last 6, you compare that to Ronaldo, who's got 1 small return to add to his 0.8 big returns in the last 6. It really does make a difference, and those FPL points will be flooding in for Ronaldo, which they have. Obviously, he got his hat trick in the double game week, and Salah has been, wanting more a little bit, and hopefully he gets a little bit of that form up for the remainder of the season because I still think he's essential until the end of the season. But still, it's not great. It's not great, but playing in that Liverpool team who seem to be scoring tons and tons of goals. I know they struggled against Everton a little bit just because of the nature of the game. He still captaincy option until the end of the season, but I don't think either of us are captaining him this week, are we, Ryan? I think we're opting for Spurs players.
Yeah, I think that Newcastle away fixture is pretty difficult. Newcastle at St James's Park have been quite strong recently, especially from a defensive point of view. 0.8 big returns for Salah in the last 6 game weeks is still very strong. I mean, it still beats Kane, Son. It's a lot higher than De Bruyne, for example, and people are considering De Bruyne. De Bruyne historically has been a small attempts, small chances monster whose conversion rate is, far surpasses most other players when it comes to small chances. What are your thoughts on that move? Because a lot of people have they sold Salah for Bruno, and now they're thinking, well, do I admit defeat and go back, or do I go across to a Kevin De Bruyne and see if I can beat Salah with the De Bruyne?
It has to be Salah. It has to be. I mean, the nature of the way Salah plays, he's on penalties for Liverpool. Liverpool probably the most attacking team in the league, I'd say. I'm not sure I could go De Bruyne over Salah. Just from a statistical point of view as well, I just can't get behind a player that scores more difficult opportunities more regularly, because it just seems illogical to me, and it kind of feels like it's not going to happen again in the future, although it probably will because he's demonstrated it long enough. But when you could compare De Bruyne to like the Kulusevski, that ratio between the big returns and the small returns, like Kulusevski's got 0.1 big returns versus 0.6 small returns. De Bruyne is 0.2 big returns, 0.8 small returns. I think obviously if you compare those two players, I'd be much more bullish about De Bruyne continuing getting those more difficult returns. When Kulusevski is probably not going to continue getting those returns if Spurs aren't scoring tons of goals every game, which they haven't been. I think City are more likely to, in which De Bruyne will be a far better asset. But I think Salah's just the centre of everything. Don't overthink it. Go Salah.
Well, what about then? I don't have any City midfielders. Looking at this, Foden doesn't fill me with much confidence.
Oh, nor me. I'm an owner as well. Nightmare.
But it feels a little bit too difficult to get to a De Bruyne. I've already got Son. I've already got Salah. I don't really want to lose either of them to get a De Bruyne in. Where do I go in midfield then? Where do we go in midfield? If not Foden, we can't stretch to De Bruyne. What do we do with City?
It's a really good question. I'm not sure I can provide you like that much of a decent answer. Like, Jesus is going to get rotated. Yes, he scored 5 attacking returns. That's not going to happen again. Maybe even not regular returns until the end of the season. So Mahrez, again, is a rotation risk. Sterling, rotation risk. And even Sterling's stats aren't that great. I think the best we can do with City is kind of ignore their stats and just try and pick the players that are more likely to start more regularly, the players with the highest recovery rates, which kind of does include Foden in that. It includes De Bruyne, if you can stretch to him. It includes Cancelo. And, that's why Cancelo is a popular asset, because he's played like 95% of City's entire games during the season. So this kind of suggests to me, if you want to be solid and pick City players, defence might be the way to go. Cancelo, Laporte, maybe a Foden, or if you want to go triple City defence and bring in like an Edison as well, that isn't like the worst idea.
Yeah, it's just restrictive then, because if I feel like the community did this week, for instance, that Sterling was going to start against Watford, and, it looked as though that was a great fixture for City to score goals. It was. It just so happened that Sterling did a Havertz and avoided all FPL returns that week. If you've got 3 City defenders and we approach a game week where it looks as though Mahrez is bang on to start, looks as though Sterling is bang on to start, one of these more explosive midfielders, then you've snookered yourself. You can't get to a City midfielder because you've got the 3 defenders there. So, yeah, I think I like the 2 City defenders and the 1 midfielder approach. Like you say, it's just about picking whichever one has the greatest expected minutes. And for me, that's still Foden, although I would like to see him a little bit higher on this graph.
It kind of puts you off him in favour of maybe another team like a Mason Mount, like a Kai Havertz, like I don't know, maybe not a Liverpool player because Diaz and Jota will rotate, but you get my point. As a Foden owner, I don't really expect him to score. I mean, the fact that he scored that goal was a massive deflection was obviously incredibly welcome as an owner, but like I didn't feel like I deserved it. It was.
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned Diaz there, and we're talking about Foden. I think Diaz, Jota, Foden, how do you rank those 3? Because they're all very different FPL assets. They're similar prices. I think Foden's probably the cheapest of the 3. Diaz, in my mind, and Jota as well, probably more explosive than Foden. But I don't think they're as nailed as Foden. And so you balance it out perhaps with the expected minutes. But if you get a Diaz ahead of a start at Anfield, that seems like a ticket to FPL points, don't you think?
If you've got a strong enough squad and you can't stretch to Robertson at the back, I don't mind it. I don't mind it, to be fair, because when you watch Diaz, he's obviously an exceptional player and he's started getting more regular returns, even when he's come on from the bench. So I don't mind it, to be fair. He's a nice player to own, but I think Robertson is still for the price as well. I think Robertson's still the priority for me, because Diaz is not going to get enough minutes to maybe justify that price. I think Jota and Diaz are both absolutely fantastic players for different reasons. If they played 90 every game, I'm sure we would be looking at one of them, if not both. Well, maybe not both, because we don't have enough Liverpool spots, but you get my point. It's really difficult to choose. I think Foden starts more often out of those two Liverpool players, but at the same time, I kind of want the Liverpool players more a little bit, especially Diaz. He looks so good. That touch, the little back heel,
incredible,
touch, so good. I'll just buy him for my FPL team just for that. But yeah, I mean, this chart sort of shows. But moving on, like we bought Havertz in this week, quite a lot of us, and he went missing in that game. But it says to me that he's not going to be that involved. But when he is involved, it's more likely to be a big attempt. And that bodes well for returns. So Chelsea's fixtures, they've got Everton next, who have not been doing well defensively. So you kind of expect that maybe he could get something in that game. And then their fixtures in the double is Wolves, who don't let a lot away. So actually, Havertz against that game probably isn't great. And then if he gets rotated against Leeds, then it's quite a lot of pressure to do well in Everton, and then beforehand, obviously in Man United. Man United let in a lot of big chances as well, so bodes well.
Yeah, I actually don't mind that Wolves game for Chelsea. I watched a lot of the Wolves versus Burnley game, and Wolves' defensive line just got exposed. Like if Wout Weghorst is running in behind your defense, you know you're in trouble. And Willy Bolly and Connor Cody just could not get their defensive line matched up. And that's how they scored their goal. Cody comes up. He comes forward to try and catch them offside. He plays the offside trap. But Willy Bolly doesn't get the message. He drops back deep, keeping Weghorst onside. And that happened multiple times. Vidra getting in behind as well. So I actually think Wolves, from a defensive point of view, they're a team that we should be targeting. And I'm happy to hold my Chelsea assets. I've got Havertz and Mount. I'm happy to hold them for Everton. When Everton are at Goodison, they're a lot more difficult than when they're playing away from home. And I'm happy to hold at least one of them for double game week 36. I'll probably transfer one out, but I actually don't think that Wolves fixture is too difficult.
Yeah, I mean, as Bernardo said in the chat, like the rotation aspect for Chelsea is potentially quite rife, because I think Havertz, Werner, can't remember who the other one, came off around the 75-minute mark, and Lukaku, Pulisic, and whoever came on. So he's giving them a little bit of minutes rest, but then they play again Thursday, and then they play again to the weekend shortly after. So this rotation is going to be an issue, I think, and it puts me off James, and it puts me off doubling. I don't know. It's crazy how perceptions change so quickly in FPL, isn't it? We were recommending last week to double up on like Chelsea midfielders, which I think actually you did, Ryan. You've got Havertz and Mount. I think Mount probably is more secure of minutes, just in general, but then he could be just benched in one game. You just don't know. I think Tuchel's going to wrap his best players in cotton wool for that FA Cup final.
Yeah, it's just about buying a ticket to the lottery for double game weeks for me. And I think, from what we've seen of Chelsea recently, it was a lottery worth investing in. But with Havertz, we did speak about the change in formation, and we wondered whether that change and the 3-4-1-2 would mean that Havertz is kind of less effective than if it was the former formation that they had, where they had more of a 3 up front. And I mean, maybe we're seeing that play out. And it was only guesswork at the time. The sample size wasn't enough for us to really go off. But it looked as though Werner and Mount were the beneficiaries of that change in formation.
Yeah.
And it looked as though Havertz was missing out. And it kind of did play out that way against West Ham.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Havertz got shifted out wide. It seemed like he was trying to play on the right wing, trying to generate some space. But maybe that's just the way the West Ham played. Maybe against different opposition when they play the same formation through that 1-2 at the top. Maybe Havertz benefits a little bit more. Maybe Man United is the perfect opportunity to see that, because I think Man United will play completely differently to West Ham. But you're right. I think Werner and Mount seemed much better options in that. And it's kind of displayed on this chart to a certain extent. I think Werner's stats are actually really good. And while he's still returning, there's still hope for him. There's still hope for him at all. The one player we haven't mentioned is Alonso. 10-pointer this week. Unbelievable stats. I think maybe it's a small sample size. I'm not 100% sure how many starts he's played in the last 6. But I think it's like 2 or 3 at least. But he's got 3 attacking returns, I think. Maybe 2 attacking returns, but 0.5 big returns per appearance is incredibly good. And for a defender, he's getting into those positions, those Alonso-esque positions, even running across the front man at the penalty spot.
Yeah,
so,
you love it.
As a non-Alonso owner, are you looking to get him in at all?
No, I think for me, if I was going to get Alonso in, I would have done so last game week. I was actually quite hesitant to bring Alonso in for this double game week 34 because I saw the way he played against Arsenal and he got exposed multiple times in defence. And I felt like Thomas Tuchel had justification for dropping Alonso in that game for this double game week, I should say, because of how much he got exposed defensively. And that's what happened before. Alonso had the run of games in the team. Chilwell was injured at this time, and Alonso was being targeted from a defensive point of view. And Thomas Tuchel brought him out of the team. That's when Malang Sarr started getting some games. They shifted to a 4 at the back. I think we even saw Saul out there. So I kind of have this fear that Alonso, for as good as he is going forward, and as much as we love that from an FPL point of view, talking real football, he is a bit of a what's the word? You're
a punt.
No, but like you're a bat. Oh, I completely lost the word. But like, yeah, defensively, he's not great. And
a liability.
That's the word. A liability. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, defensively, he is a liability, and I had concerns about how long he would remain in that Chelsea team, but it looks as though they have no other options.
It could have gone either way, couldn't it? If he was benched against West Ham, a lot of content creators would have said, yeah, we kind of forecasted this logically because, they could have switched to a back 4, especially with all the injuries. And, especially leaving Reece James out, leaves it pretty stretched at the back. And Christensen was apparently ill in the warm-up, and Chalobah came in, who was actually pretty good, I thought. But at the same time, if Alonso had got left out, he becomes like a non-option. And, he's just Tuchel's easily swayed as to benching Alonso, some of his worst players, but he's stuck with him. And Alonso had one of his best games for a while. And he was man of the match on Sky. So, I think he's a really good option now, and it's kind of music to my ears. People saying, "Oh, I'm not going to bring him now because I'm going to benefit him from the next couple of game weeks," and I think owners will do. But at the same time, he has that capacity to just have a terrible game and get booked or even sent off. And I've just got his stats up here. Played 54 minutes against Brentford and didn't get anything. I think he might have got booked in that. No, he conceded. Oh yeah, I think
that was like the 4-1, wasn't it? That result.
That was the 4-1. He didn't get booked. He just conceded 2 goals and then got brought off in the 54th minute. So that says it all. And then 6-0, we got 13 pointers. 13 points with double-digit haul, and then a 1 point against Arsenal, and then a double-digit haul against West Ham. So it seems like bad, good, yeah. Feast or famine, absolutely. And I wonder whether that trend will continue against Man United. But certainly he seems exciting, if nothing else. So
Yeah. I mean, if you've got Alonso in your team, you're cheering. I can see a couple of people in the chat who have Alonso. It feels like a bit of a wild card pick. If you were on a wild card this week, you would have brought him into your team. I don't have Robbo. I've only got James, Trent, and Cancelo. So I've only got 3 of the big 5 at the back. And Alonso feels like less of a priority than Robbo. I would prefer to get Robbo into my team than Alonso, even with the, I guess he's had his double game week, but even with the nice fixtures in the short term against Everton and Wolves, I'd prefer to get Robertson in over Alonso. Yeah, there's an argument to say that he's probably second in line after that. Most people have Cancelo and Trent. I think Robbo would come before Alonso, but then, Alonso's right up there.
Well, let's discuss our transfer moves this week. So we'll bring up your team. This is your game week 35 team. Ramsdale at the back against West Ham, Alexander-Arnold, James, Cancelo, Salah, Havertz, Saka, Mount and Son in midfield, a beastly midfield, and then Weghorst and Mateta up top. So how many free transfers do you have?
I've only got the 1 free transfer. I've got 0.5 in the bank. One thought I did have, because I'm trying to target my weakest link and then to upgrade there. Prior to watching Burnley against Wolves, I was pretty keen on moving Weghorst out, to be honest. But Michael Jackson, would you believe? It feels so strange saying that. But Michael Jackson, the new Burnley manager, has worked wonders with Burnley. And they've got 7 points from their last 3 games. Weghorst, is playing really well. And so he's all of a sudden becomes an asset that I'm happy to hold. So I think looking at my bench, it's Cody and Burn that are probably 2 of the weakest links. Broja, not great as well, but I'm happy to just keep him on the bench. I don't have any chips left. I don't have a bench boost, so I'm happy to just let him ride out on the bench. I was thinking of a simple move of Cody to a Matty Cash because Aston Villa have Norwich this week and then they've got the double-double. And I need to start thinking about, for someone without any chips, making sure my squad is set up for 36 and 37. And because I don't have any chips, I need to have quite a balanced approach in the way that I attack them. I can't overinvest on 36, for example, because it will mean that I'll come to 37 and I'll be left behind or needing to take multiple hits and then therefore negating all of the points that I got in 36. So I'm trying to adopt a balanced approach. And because I'm doing that, I'm really targeting at the moment either getting in a second City player, Robertson, or someone like a Wilfred Zaha or a Coutinho. So those are the kind of the pool of 4 teams: a Liverpool, City, Crystal Palace, or Aston Villa, because I think that they have the best doubles and the best fixtures to come between now and the end of the season. But looking at my team here, with only 0.5 in the bank, I don't really want to drop Havertz or Mount this week. I don't want to drop any of my strikers. Mateta is fine. I'll see how he goes against Leeds tonight. But I'm thinking I'll just roll the transfer this week and go into 36 with 2 free transfers. Gameweek 36, interestingly, we have, I think it's 4 games kicking off all at the same time.
Is that
on
3
the
p.m. ones? Yeah.
So I think we might get some early team news. Crystal Palace playing Watford, that's a great fixture. And then the second of their, then they've got a double game, I should say, after that. So yeah, I'm thinking that rolling the transfer this week will help me in 36 attack that double game week. And there's probably not anything I can see here that I could do with just the 1 free transfer.
Yeah, I think that's wise. And sometimes it's the best move to enable like even a mini wildcard if you want to take a hit with 3 moves next week. But yeah, I mean, I think a Weghorst to a Richarlison move next week might be one to consider as well. Like we talked about Richarlison, how gritty Everton seem to be and need to be till the end of the season. But that upgrade costs you, 1.1 million or something. And I mean, you need to fund that somehow. And I think you've got 0.5, so you need 0.6. Like downgrading Havertz to like of a Maddison, who has a double-double. But at the same time, Leicester have, Europe to contend with, and I'm not sure how many minutes Maddison's actually going to get. But fundamentally, Maddison is the best player in that Leicester side. Vardy is back, by the way. Left field shout. We haven't even spoken about him. Could he even... he's quite a lot of money to spend for someone who hasn't really been played many minutes, but we know what he's capable of. And I guess he's going to be utilised in Europe. But at the same time, Maddison is always better when Vardy's on the pitch as well. So much assist threat. So you could downgrade Havertz to Maddison to free up another million and try and get James up to Robertson at the same time as well. But
yeah, I think what my move will be in 36 will be Havertz down to someone like a Jacob Ramsey, because Aston Villa have the double-double, and then use the rest of those funds, 2 free transfers to upgrade my defenders, to get a Robertson in there, to get a second City player, to get, Cody and Burn out of the team and target some double game week players. So that's what I'm thinking about doing at the moment. I've got 5, premium-ish midfielders. I think downgrading one to a Ramsey, or if I don't want to go down that far, like you say, a Maddison or even a Coutinho, that will free up a little bit of cash to upgrade my defence. So that's probably what I'm likely to do in 36.
I like that. I think that's a good tip for anyone out there who doesn't have chips left and maybe doesn't have a great bench, that trying to get through these different double game weeks probably is easiest if you upgrade the rest of your squad rather than just changing your starting 11. It means that you have more options, more combinations that you can get the benefit of. I know it's difficult spreading the money across 15 players, but maybe if you shop well, then you can get through it. So yeah, agree with what your plans are, Ryan. And lastly, Captain Son, are you completely set on that, or could it waver to a Salah?
Well, actually, I don't think it'll go to Salah. If it goes to anyone else, it'll probably go to Saka.
Oh, right.
I probably trust Son more than Saka. We know Saka's got a bit of a niggling injury. I think he'll be fine. I don't think there's anything to worry about there. But West Ham away, I think West Ham will be fielding a very inexperienced team in that match. So I like Saka this week, but yeah, I think it'll stay on Son for now.
I think it's a good fixture for Spurs. We've spoken about, Leicester. They've got Europe on Thursday, and then the second leg the following week. So yeah, this fixture for them is a bit of a dead rubber for. I think they'll rotate heavily, and Spurs will be very likely to capitalise upon that.
Well, they need a response. If we're talking about the top 4, they dropped points away to Brentford. Arsenal have beaten Chelsea, beaten Manchester United. Spurs will need to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. They need to keep this race open. All of their attention is the Premier League. All of Leicester's attention will be in the Europe. So I think it's a marriage, perfect marriage. And I think Son captain is definitely the most obvious here. So yeah, best of luck with that. And with that, we'll move on to my team. And I am also captaining a Spurs player. Harry Kane currently has the armband in a 4-5-1. Again, Ramsdale in goal, Alexander-Arnold, James, Alonso, Laporte. And in midfield, Salah, Havertz, Saka, Foden, Kulusevski, and then a Mr. Harry Kane all by himself up front in a 4-5-1. And I have 2 free transfers, and I'm not even sure what to do, really. The original plan was to do San Maximin down to a 4.5 forward, and then Cody up to Cancelo, but I am 0.1 short, as I think I mentioned last week, and unless a 4.4 forward becomes available in the next week or so, which, I would do a lot of things to make that happen. But otherwise, I think it's probably going to be like a preemptive transfer, a downgrade Sam Maximin to someone. Not sure who. I could either go for like a 5.5 million forward and get some funds to upgrade someone else, or I could go the whole hog, downgrade to a 4.5 and have, whatever it is. I think it's like 2.3 million to spend somewhere, and that could go some way into upgrading James to Alonso and Kulusevski to like a Maddison. And that's probably the way that I would go, because I don't need my entire bench. I've still got a free hit left. I think I'm just going to try and optimize the starting 11. And I don't know. I don't know whether we're getting carried away by removing Reece James, but we do get fixated on recency bias, and the fact that Robertson's done well, 15 points, must mean that, backed up with his previous history of points, I need Robertson, and James has really been suffering, but we know his capacity for points, and the fact that he's got this niggling injury and this propensity for having these innocuous niggles. So that kind of puts me off him. But at the same time, we know that James can do it. It kind of makes me feel like if I move James on, I'm going to suffer from like a really big haul. But maybe that's just a silly way of thinking.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's probably negated though with Robertson, if you think about it, like having the combination of Trent, Alonso, Laporte, Robertson. That's pretty strong in defence. You've got 2 free transfers this week, but you're looking to just use one.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on having 2 free transfers for 36? Do you think that's a great strategy for managers out there?
Actually, you just made me think of something. If I choose to free hit in 36, then obviously I would have to waste a transfer. So I'd have to use 2. So I guess it really depends what happens with this announcement. I think it's today on the City double. Because if City is placed in, 37, for example, and I choose to 3 hit in 36, then my transfers would have to involve bringing in the likes of Villa, Everton, or Leicester players because they play in 37 and I wouldn't be free hitting then. But conversely, otherwise it's just upgrading like the likes of Chelsea players to more Liverpool players for 36 and more City players for 36 if they double then. So it really just depends on this announcement. 2 free transfers is a decent time to have now, but if you're free hitting in 36, make sure you spend them now rather than forfeiting one of them or both of them ahead of 36 if you are free hitting. So don't fall into that trap. But otherwise, if you don't have a chip, having 2 free transfers ahead of 36 is incredibly powerful as well, because you'll be able to respond to last minute injuries or news or injury news. And Game Week 36, guys, if City is placed in Game Week 36, it will be the 200-point game week, the biggest game week of the season, because you have all of the top teams with double game weeks, all of the best players in the league having 2 fixtures with all pretty much something to play for. So yeah, exciting times.
Hey, so I wanted to ask, you took a -8 last week and it wasn't a great game week, but you're on a green arrow this week. So are you back to where you were before you took that hit?
Almost. If Robertson hadn't put in that goal and 15 points, I was on for like 13k, which is much better. It was like a 3k swing, that, which is really, really annoying. Wow. But perfectly reasonable to try and get back into the top 10k. I think I'm about 20 points off. So yeah, nice. Very doable. Fingers crossed we can do it with a free hit left in the back pocket. But yeah, that's all I want, Ryan. That's all I want. The -8 I think was probably just about worth it, just for like Alonso, because Havertz hasn't done anything yet. Hopefully he can get something in the Man United game.
Yeah, no, the team looks good. I mean, if you're scratching around for a transfer, there's always a goalkeeper move. We've spoken about Arsenal defensively. I mean, do you save some money and drop to a Schmeichel? It feels like if you're spending a transfer with only a few game weeks to go on a goalkeeper, then you really must be out of ideas. But yeah, there's a potential, a cost saving there by going Ramsdale down. But yeah, Ted, your team looks strong. I like the fact that you've got your 2 City, you've got your 3 Chelsea players already in place. You've got good players from good teams, as we've already spoken about. So yeah, and the 2 Spurs players this week, that looks quite strong as well, because I think most managers have sold their Spurs players. So there could be a real differential this week.
Do you know what? You mentioned the goalkeeper move. I wouldn't be adverse to bringing in Edison for Ramsdale, potentially, depending on when the City... I know he's boring. I know he doesn't get save points, but I'm just going to fiddle around with this. Like Edison for Ramsdale, and then it was like Saint-Maximin down to a 4.5. Ferguson. They've all got names I don't know about. And then who was the other one? Reece James up to... I have exact money for all of this. Ramsdale up to Edison. Up to Edison. Reece James up to Robertson, and Saint-Maximin down to a 4.5 forward. that kind of does appeal. That would be 3 City, 2 Chelsea, 3 Liverpool.
Yeah, and you could go without Cancelo then, because Cancelo's greatest threat is not so much of his attacking returns, because we've seen so far this season that he hasn't got many attacking returns. It's the clean sheet coupled with the bonus points that he's likely to get. But if you've got Edison and Laporte, you've got the clean sheets squared away. So I think the Cancelo threat is significantly reduced by going Edison in goals.
I don't mind that, actually. Yeah, I am tempted, but obviously I kind of have to plan this out because the free hit's going to remove that possibility, and price changes with exact money to do those moves.
I'd lock it in now, Ted. I'd do it now.
A little mini wild card. You know, I might do it. I think that Ramsdale fixture against West Ham is a good one, though. I think Arsenal probably do keep a clean sheet. So yeah, at the end of that, I don't know what I'm doing. You've come up with a nice goalkeeper plan for me, so I don't know. That might happen, but yeah, I think we'll leave it there. I think thanks to everyone who's joined us. And yeah, I don't know whether that's provided any more insight. I would have loved for that game week announcement, the City Wolves, to be announced before we'd streamed. But hopefully, if it's announced in game week 37, then this might be applicable because we had the fixture ticket earlier. So we will see what happens. Hopefully, that's helped you, Ryan, make your game week 35 decisions. Although it does sound that you're rolling that transfer, so potentially just an easy one. But yes. Thanks again for joining us, everyone, and best of luck for the week. Enjoy the FPL content. There's plenty left on Fantasy Football Scout throughout the week, so do check out all the streams. And Ryan has his own YouTube channel. Check it out at FPL Inzaghi, which you sort of do a video once or 2 or 3 times a week, right?
Yeah. I used to just kind of do one video and a stream, but I'm trying to be a little bit more consistent with the videos. So for the last couple of months, churning out 2 to 3 videos per week. So nice. Yeah, get amongst it.
Great job. Great effort. And also going on Fantasy Football Scout and spending your evenings over in Oz. Spending your evenings.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah, hit that like button, everyone. Really helps the views, helps the algorithm and all that jazz. So yeah, if you've enjoyed it, if you appreciated the work, do give it a like. And yeah, I love the long drawn out goodbyes, so we're just going to continue with that.
So long, farewell.
Right, see you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.